so moving over to video number 2 now to carry on going through your comments. So another comment is in reference to camouflaging. Camouflaging is often used simultaneously to the word masking, although I do think they're maybe slightly different things, although maybe that's being a little bit pedantic about the issue, but I think camouflaging is more when someone else doesn't see the autism, like you're kind of, in other words, someone else is not detecting the autism, but you are not actively seeking to hide it in any form. Whereas masking implies something a bit more kind of conscious, maybe. Personally, by the way, I am highly critical of the whole concept of masking. This video is not the time or place to go into that. But I will say very briefly that I actually am highly critical of masking because from my own experience as an autistic person, it doesn't make much sense. I have developed as a person. I now have some awareness, a bit more awareness of how you're supposed to behave in social situations. That is not masking, that is just evolution of development. And every single person on this earth will be changing their behaviour slightly around different types of person. That is not unique to autism. That's just part of humanity. I might behave a little bit differently, say, around my dad than I do around when I used to volunteer at Age UK. That's not masking. I wasn't masking when I was at Age UK. I was being myself. It was ego-syntonic. It was part of who I am. It wasn't ego-dystonic. It wasn't at clash with who I am. I couldn't behave any other way at Age UK. That was my evolution, my development as a person. I have a bit more social know-how now, clearly, as I did as a child. That is normal, we develop, but I'm still autistic, and I wasn't masking or hiding anything. I was being my true, authentic self, but it was tiring, because socialising is tiring. Even when I'm with my dad and I'm maybe not putting on my best face, and I'm being a little bit more, I don't know, not authentic, because actually when I was at Age UK, I was being authentic. It wasn't an act as such, it was just a different facet of myself. That's not masking. Everyone puts on different facets of themselves to different people. It's all part of who you are. Put it this way, whenever I'm in a social situation, it is tiring, okay? But I'm not going to go into masking right now, because that will take another video. But anyway, and I'm going off a bit of a tangent as I do. But anyway, this person said, am I right to assume that camouflaging is a conscious act that takes significant amounts of effort to sustain? So yeah, I personally think here that possibly masking is a more accurate way of describing this, because camouflaging I think is a bit more passive. So masking as a conscious act to take significant amounts of effort to sustain. So again, like I just said a moment ago, I'm not sure that masking is a bigger thing as what they make out. Whenever I'm in a social situation with anyone, I'm exerting some degree of energy. But that is... And by the way, every single person on this planet has to do that. And everyone behaves slightly differently in different settings. And I'm sure most people would say that, say, I personally don't work, but most people would say that when they're with their, I don't know, their boss, for example, at work, that is more tiring than, say, when they're with a close family member. Or maybe not if they don't have a good relationship with their family member, but you know, you might expect them to be a bit more relaxed, say, when they're with their husband or wife or whatever, than when they're with their boss. Are they masking their true selves when they're with their boss, or is that just a different part of their selves? Whenever you're in a social situation, different parts of you come out. I'm not sure it's masking, but anyway, that'll take another video. But suffice to say that if you're autistic, any social situation is going to be stressful, but obviously it's going to be even more stressful, say, when you're with, I don't know, a work colleague, if you are in work, if you're lucky enough to be at work, because say with your family member, I think everyone, autistic or not, would experience that discrepancy, but if you're autistic, it's probably going to be felt 10 times more. Maybe it's just because when you're with your boss or someone like that, things are more socially demanding for everyone, but obviously if you're autistic and you're already struggling socially, that's going to be up to the max. I would actually say that all socialising when you're autistic is a conscious act. Even when I'm socialising with my dad, for example, I'm using up energy. Less energy, say, than maybe when I was at Age UK, but I'm still using up energy. So I used to volunteer at Age UK, that was before the pandemic, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. So they say, so if this does take a lot of effort, why would someone who is taught out an assessment expend effort camouflaging their symptoms that could be an important part of them receiving a diagnosis? So my answer here is that maybe it's simply the case that the person, playing devil's advocate, maybe it's simply the case that the person isn't so much actively trying to hide anything, but maybe it's more that the person has developed enough social ability through development that they don't appear necessarily abnormal in that type of setting. Particularly if you think about it, an interview, like an assessment, is quite a structured environment. It's often actually very autism friendly because it's like a one-to-one environment. It's often in a very kind of calm, say, room. They often go out of their way to make it, from a sensory perspective, quite okay. It's a structured environment. So it's possible that the person in that setting might not show as abnormal behaviour as they might do in a more spontaneous social environment. So I don't know whether it's necessarily a conscious act as such that could be turned on or off. It might just be that the person, they've evolved enough social ability to be able to do okay in that type of environment. In which case, it's not so much masking or camouflaging that they have to see beyond, it's more the person's development as an adult at that point in time, which could potentially make it a bit difficult for the clinician, which is why I'd argue it's so important they need to draw upon other sources of evidence, such as their parents, other people who know them well, school reports, because that will be able to tap into the social difficulties that might not necessarily be readily apparent in that type of context. Your person also says, or is this camouflaging used as an explanation of there being no third-party awareness of their difficulties? Is it possible to camouflage to such an extent that no one else is aware? So I'd argue, no, it's not possible to camouflage to such an extent that no one else is aware. I mean, to put it this way, I couldn't, if we're going to use the word camouflage, although I think that term is problematic, but I'll use it for want of another word right now, I couldn't camouflage to such an extent that my parents weren't aware that something was very, very different about me. I couldn't camouflage to such an extent that, well, to put it this way, when I was a child at primary school, I was socially a lot more obvious than I am now. I would say my autism is just as bad as what it was when I was a kid, and I've been faced with new challenges growing up, and some challenges have actually got worse. But socially, as a child, I was a lot more impaired than what I'm now. My theory of mind deficit difficulties were a lot more extreme. I literally was in my own little world. I had no idea that other people even had feelings. I was very inappropriate, so school noticed and they wrote about it. It was in my psychological report guide, social interaction problems. It was picked up right from when I was very young. Other people noticed it. My parents obviously noticed it, obviously. So even though now as an adult I've developed more social awareness. I'm still socially screwed and no idea how relationships work or anything like that, and I still don't really have any proper friends, but I've developed more surface social ability. I can now hold at least a reasonable conversation with someone I know well, which I actually could not do at all as a teenager. That came on board quite late, even being able to have a conversation, but I can now do it, reasonably okay. Okay, obviously expending a great deal of energy doing it, and I don't have any social understanding, but I can pass off this kind of semblance of normality, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it's certainly not possible for me to camouflage to such an extent that no one else is aware, because obviously my parents were aware and everything else, and if you spend any amount of time with me, you will very quickly become aware of my difficulties. Just as this person says that other people do with their ADHD and OCD, people have always become aware of their difficulties. Yeah, it's exactly the same as for me. So it is possible that someone might present at an interview for autism assessment and for signs of autism not to be immediately apparent in outward behaviour. Excuse me. But that is why it's so important to talk to other people who know the person well and to conduct, if necessary, neuropsychological testing and all those other things. And another commenter says that it's very important for there to be sensitive handling of situations where an autism diagnosis is not given. Yep, I absolutely agree with that. Another person says, another commentator said, commentator? That's not the right word, is it? My brain's going today. Commenter. That's not a word, is it? Commenter. Another person who comments, says that assessment can be a lot more complicated for older people as their parents might be dead. There might not have been any special needs assessments when they're at school because they're too old and it wasn't around in their time. So, and that is true, and I get that. I completely get that. It's a lot harder for older people. Another person says that the parents might even refuse to participate. There could be family breakdowns. There might be negative parental views on autism. So all of those things can mean that maybe for some people it's just not possible for their parents to be there. I was very, very lucky. My parents were fully 100% behind me getting assessed for autism because both my parents suspected autism in me way before I was even aware that I might have it, because I was in denial. And when my dad used to suggest it as a possibility back when I was about 11 or 12, he joked about it. He would say asparagus syndrome whenever I was behaving in a way that he thought was like Asperger's. He called it asparagus syndrome. And my mum thought that I was autistic she often used to talk about autism, but she used it a bit like a dirty word, which wasn't really very helpful. Like she was saying, you're behaving like an autistic child, and I was like, my only understanding of autism was kids who were non-verbal and really profound, and I was like, well, I'm not like that. And she was like, well, you're behaving like an autistic child because you're not you were calling for cuddles and stuff. She used it a bit like a sort of dirty word, and that wasn't very. That kind of obviously put me off, made me go more into denial. But yeah, my parents were 100% behind it, and when I finally came to my senses and realised that, I actually googled it randomly one day and I was like, whoa, they're white, I can see this might be me. My parents were 100% behind me going to get assessed and everything, so I was very, very lucky that I had my parents backing and they were there and everything right from the start. But obviously for some people this is not possible, and I 100% get that. I 100% get that, and this person, who is a lot older than me, said that however they have contacted people who knew them when little and they've got evidence that way, and I think they're still waiting for an assessment, so good luck with that. So you're doing the right thing, seeking that assessment. I wish you well. So I think I'm going to stop now actually, because I'm going to run out, but there's more I want to talk about, so I have to wait until another day. But thank you for watching.